Hello, welcome back to my channel. If you are new, I am Robin and I'm a gay person that likes to talk about books. So we are halfway through the year, or over halfway through the year, which makes me feel physically sick because it feels like 10 minutes ago it was Christmas. We'll not think about it too hard because existential crisis and all that, but it is over halfway through the year, which means I have a list of some of my favourite books that I have read this year so far. This list will be in order of reading them, and I usually make this list because at the end of the year, if you're reading 50, 60, 70 plus books a year, I think it's just too much to put in one video, so I do like to do a breakdown in the middle of the year and at the end of the year. Without further ado, let's dive in. So the first book is I'm Glad My Mum Died. If you were on any social media platform, or even you could have lived out in the desert and you would have known that this book was coming out, because ever since the announcement of this book, people have been extremely excited to read it. And I read this and finished this on the 1st of January, so the very first book I read this year, and that is I'm Glad My Mum Died. Like I said, anybody who's anybody's mother has read this book or heard about this book, so I don't want to talk too much about it, especially because of the topics that are involved in this book. But if by some miracle you don't know, this is a autobiography by child star Jeanette McCurdy, who was in things such as iCarly or Sam and Cat, and she recounts her experiences as a child star and the abuse from her mother that she has during this era, and how her mum sort of pushed her into acting because it was her mum's dream job, and how she recounts all of these deeply intimate and personal information about herself and the situation she was put through, whether it was with her family, whether it was with TV studios, TV execs, and all the stuff that she was put through and how and what it caused her to go through. It is a deeply personal book. The writing is super impressive, super detailed, and it's so engaging to read. Everything she went through is so terrible, but it's such an incredibly engaging read. So I'm very, very excited to see what she does, because I'm sure I saw something saying that she's like got a book deal now, so and she will be coming out with more, and I am very, very excited for that. And I can't wait to see what she does, and I hope she's leading a better and happier life than she was. So yes, this was my first read, and again, one of the best books I read this year, one of the first books I read this year. The next book I want to talk about is actually a duology, so it is Criers War and Ironheart. I actually did these as an audio book, which is why my Criers War is like a brand new copy, because I did an audio book of them both instead. It is a fantasy duology and it is gay, which obviously extra bonus points from me. Criers War is set 100 years after the War of Kinds. This war was between humans and the robots that humans created called Automai, and the Automai ended up winning and they currently rule the land. In this book we follow Lady Crier, who is sort of like princess of the kingdom, and she is shortly meant to rule the kingdom, taking over from her father. She is betrothed to someone called Skya Keenock, who is sort of like an alt-right for Automai basically, and has this and he has these very dark secrets and a dark history, and has plans to basically kill off humankind. And Crier has sympathy for humans, but she doesn't know why. We also follow the story of Ayla, who is a human servant who is working in the palace, and Ayla is trying to work her way up to be able to work alongside Lady Crier so she can kill Lady Crier in revenge of Automai killing her entire family. There's love, betrayal, revenge, loss. I really enjoyed reading them, and I consumed it so quickly, and sticking with these characters was really, really nice. The setting was really submersive, the characters were well defined, and I love Lady Crier and Ayla so much. I think both of them have really unique perspectives, and I really liked their point of views, and I really enjoyed it. It was really good. I love my fantasy, and this was an incredible book. The third book I read this year, and it was actually for book club, was The Seven Moons of Maali Almedia, and this was the winner of the 2022 Booker Prize, so you know it's like incredibly good quality, and it definitely deserves that award, because what an absolutely incredible read. This book is set during the Sri Lankan Civil War, follows Maali Almedia, who is a war photographer, as he wakes up dead with no idea who killed him. In the afterlife, he's told that he needs to move on to the next stage of being in the afterlife, or after 7 full moons, he will become a lost spirit who will just wander the earth for the rest of his life. So, you know, terrifying. I don't think I could be locked sort of like invisibly watching the world forever, so I would move on pretty quickly. But Maali is desperate to get his friend and his lover to find the hidden photos that he has taken and get them to expose these photos and the corruption that these photos show in the government, to take the government down. This book is a historical fiction book with a fantasy, obviously a fantasy setting. It was a really gripping book. It was super visual. I didn't know anything about the Sri Lankan Civil War, so I did find myself googling alongside it, and it was really interesting to read alongside that book. You probably don't have to Google when you're reading this book, but I think it just helped me understand it a little bit more. And I just have to say that the environment, the setting, everything was just so incredibly rich. It was so well written and just so incredible to read, so incredibly gripping, and I really enjoyed this book. Not unusual on this channel, but it is also a queer book. This was also a book club book, and I was very obsessed with it for like a full month after I read it. But this book is At Certain Points We Touch. This book follows the narrator, who at the beginning is out at a club and at 4 o'clock in the morning looks up and realizes what date it is. They run home as it was the birthday of the man who was their very first love, and he was called Thomas James. They begin to write this detailed and very personal letter to Thomas James, and we soon find out that Thomas James has been dead for quite a while. We get to see the ins and outs of the relationship of someone that the narrator doesn't particularly like either. It was not a good relationship, it was quite toxic. They had some really good depictions of being in queer London and also being in queer New York and just navigating life as well. It's an incredible story. I really enjoyed this. I really love the genre of like writing letters to like people, whatever that genre is. I'm obsessed with. Every book I've read that is sort of that genre, I have loved completely. So this was an incredible read, and if that's your sort of style of reading, I would definitely check this out because it is very emotional, and I think it just sort of deals with grief, trauma, and just longing for somebody and missing somebody even though you didn't particularly have a great time with them, but are sort of infatuated with them or the idea of them, or you know, never seeing them getting to change. I think that was like a really interesting concept. So yeah, this was an incredible book. I got mine signed as well, but it was before I read the book, so I didn't say anything to the author, which was really awkward, but I just wanted to let them know that this was great. So the next one that I did was also an audiobook, and this was The Starless Sea. I've had to write down the plot of The Starless Sea because if I had to try and take that from my brain and try and tell you, I would get lost because I'm not 100% sure how to explain this one. So Zachary Ezra Rawlins is a student who lives in Vermont. While he's there, he goes to the library and he finds a mysterious book that has a segment on it from a story from his childhood. So it is a story about something that happened to him as a child. He has no idea how this like segment of his life is written down in this book, but when he reads through this book, he finds other pieces of just like a piece of a story from people all over time just in this story, and he has no idea what this book is, but he can't stop thinking about this book. He ends up doing a bit of research about this book and ends up at a masquerade ball in New York, which leads to him finding a magical, mysterious library that's underneath the earth, which I tell you, it's really good. This place holds hidden cities, seas, and connects people who are reaching through time to one another. But when he turns up, the place is pretty desolate and it's sort of falling to pieces. There's also a threat to this place because there is a group of people who are looking to destroy it completely. I'm making it sound a lot more complicated than it is. This book, it was a completely fun read. There's a lot of intertwining stories that don't feel like they belong in the story, but they all sort of come full circle towards the end. Like I said, these like little segments from the book that Zachary reads are actually inserted into the book you're reading, so you get to read piece by piece, and it sort of breaks up the chapters as well. So you will be reading the main storyline and then you get a story about two people who are on a pirate ship, and then about about 10 chapters later you'll get the second bit of their story, and it's sort of like that intertwined, but it all is connected. I feel like the Charlie Day, that's me right now trying to explain this entire book. This book was such a fun read. It was super incredible. Like I said, I love my fantasy book. It has like a little bit of mystery. It's magical. It's really, really beautiful. And I had so much fun reading it. There was no point where I felt it was boring, and it really kept me on my toes. I just really enjoyed it. I thought it was a very fun book. Trust me, the Starless Sea, really incredible. If you've been thinking about it, if it's on your list, you know, it might take you a bit of time to get into. You might feel a little confused at some points, but trust me, it is worth it. It is so, so good, and it is also queer as well, so big points across the board for me. So the next one is a little bit more serious, but I did also consume this as an audiobook. I read the Transgender Issue. This book is about the culture war against trans people currently. It's mostly focusing on things that are happening in the UK at the moment. The book talks about newspapers, shows, laws, government who end up using trans people as a scapegoat instead of talking about actual real issues and how it is harmful, and also how long it's been going on for. It's a heavy read. It's a really heavy read, but it's so necessary to read. This book came out in 2021. Real ever looking now at especially the laws coming across America, especially right now with Rishi like saying transphobic stuff in speeches and not getting ridiculed at all. Like, it's fucking disgusting. It's more important now than ever to be educated and stand by our trans siblings. And like I said, this book sheds light on many issues that trans people face, and it's a lot that I didn't even recognise, and it's really educational in that aspect. A super interesting, super important read, and if you have not read it yet, I implore you to do so. The next book that I read was On Earth We Are Briefly Gorgeous. Again, I read this about a month before this was announced to be a book club book, but this is a book club book as well. This is a book which is a letter written by a son to his mother who can't read. I told you, this sort of genre of book, every time, it's so good every time. The letter speaks about the narrator's experiences when it comes to love, generational trauma, masculinity, and class, especially in America. This involves the narrator's family tree and talks about their background from Vietnam and coming to America, and how navigating life in America, if you're not middle class, if you're not white, if you don't have any money, is incredibly difficult. There was a lot in this book. It was a lot to read, but it is so incredibly written. It's really sad and it will break your heart and you will cry, but it is an incredible read. The language is absolutely beautiful. It's almost like poetry the way it's written. It's incredible. It's just an incredible book. This is one of those stories that I wish I could have my mind wiped so I can read it all over again, because it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. So the next book is from my favourite series, and you may have heard of Gideon the Ninth and Harrow the Ninth, and as someone with a Gideon tattoo, I was really nervous about walking into Nona, but I don't know why I ever doubted Tamsin Muir for a second, because holy hell, is this an incredible book. I don't understand how she has no flops yet, okay? Incredible all the way through, alright? Nona the Ninth follows Nona, who just wants to have a birthday party. She goes to school, she lives with her family, and she loves dogs. But 6 months ago, she woke up in a stranger's body and does not know who she is. Now, the planet that she lives on is under attack, and the army there want to use Nona as their weapon to save the planet. But all Nona wants is just a normal life. Nona is the sweetest character in this series. She's so lovely. I want to protect her with every inch of my soul and my spirit. She's incredible. I love her. She is the moment. There's so much mystery in all of these books, and I think that this just captured everything so perfectly, and I was so excited to see certain characters. Like, It's incredible. I really fucking love this series so much. And I'm so excited for Alexa when that comes out. Another one that I consumed as an audiobook was Black British Lives Matter. This is a collection of essays in response to the outcry from the death of George Floyd, especially in the UK, and looking at it from a UK standpoint. And this was a super interesting read, as these essays talk about why it's important that we need to still keep fighting for Black lives, and how helping Black people will not only help Black people but help society as a whole. These essays are from a collection of a lot of famous people actually, and literally touch on every topic imaginable. It talks about Black mothers and fathers, poetry, government, art, comedy, TV, like it's the full spectrum of Black experience and history, and it was such a pleasure to be able to read these stories. It was incredible. It was such an incredible read. It was so open and so honest. Racism is still ingrained in our society. We are built on racist history. We need to learn about our racist British history and understand that although we see the gun violence happening in America, Black people are still getting hurt and still being killed in our prisons and by our police systems, even if it's not as widely known. This was a super educational and eye-opening book, and just understand more experiences from more point of views, and yeah, it was really good. It was a really great read. The next book I want to talk about is Vagabonds. Vagabonds was such a big story last year, and I'm so glad that I got around to reading this one. Vagabonds is a story that follows a whole bunch of different characters in Lagos. All these stories seem unconnected, but they all join up at the end. Throughout the telling of these different stories, we follow different vagabonds, which we find out through the beginning of the book has a multitude of different meanings. So the first definition is a person who wanders from place to place without a home. Vagabond can be a definition of any male person who dresses or is attired in the fashion of a woman in a public space or practice sodomy. It can also mean gross indecency. So it means anyone that they deem to be gay or trans or illegal in any sort of way. And it's a really, really interesting book about these people that all come together in their lives and all these really sort of insane stories. This book is just full of life, and it's really refreshing and addicting to read almost. There is another story intertwined with these stories, which is an entity that is above all of this in Lagos, and he's this like demon sort of thing who is more powerful than money, or like a metaphor for capitalism, a metaphor for money, because he only cares about helping the rich and famous and, you know, getting rid of poor people off the street and stuff like that. So we have this mystical beast demon guy and we see his progression alongside these vagabonds in the story, and it's a really interesting plot, and I'm definitely not doing it justice. This book just feels like it lives and breathes, and it sounds weird to say that, but when I mean this book feels electric, I fondly look back at stories from this book, and especially the ending, and it's so incredible. It's so jam-packed full of stuff, and it's just an incredible read, and that's all I have to say. This was like one of the top 3 books I've read so far this year. It's absolutely incredible. So it's just incredible. It's absolutely incredible. Final book that I have read so far this year that has been one of my favourites is The Mercies, and this may actually be in contender for the book of the year for me, and like I said, we have a good couple of months left, alright? Even though this book came out in 2020, so I feel like I'm definitely late, but here we are. This book is set in the 1600s on a Norwegian coastal village. A handful of people live there, so about 30 people live there, but due to an event on the island, all the men have died during a massive storm. Only men are allowed to hunt and fish, and so they all go out to fish, and a storm takes them all and kills all of the husbands and sons. Because of this event, this whole village is under scrutiny because they think that witchcraft is involved, and so men have been coming from all over to try and rid this small town, and I mean there's probably like 10 people left at this point, but are trying to rid this small town of witchcraft and try and find who the witch is. And like I said, the reason that they think that witchcraft happened is because first of all the men died, and second of all the women survived, and they think that if you're a woman, like I said, they don't think women should be able to hunt or find food or anything like that. And so because they survived and found food on their own, that is seen as witchcraft as well. Being a woman still sucks. It sucked for a long time. Someone called Absalom Cornet has come all the way from Scotland. He's been hailed all the way from Scotland, who is very well known because he has burned a myriad of witches, including one who was as young as like 10 years old. She was just like a poor little girl. He's been widely known for his witch finding abilities, so he has been asked to go to this tiny town and sort the witchcraft problem out. On the way, he picks up a young Norwegian wife called Ursa, and she has been told that she has to go with him and she is to stay on the island with him. She's massively afraid of Absalom because he has literally murdered children, so I feel like it's justified in saying that, you know, she should be afraid of him because she should be afraid of him. This book is gay.
Hey, you haven't returned any.
You are gay!
And it's so submersive, it's so interesting, and I really like the author because I've read Under the Dance Tree and I found that so incredible as well. And I just thought she did an incredible job with this book. I consumed this via audio, like an audiobook, and it was read by the Jessie Buckley, by the way. It was one of the best audiobook experiences I had, which sort of like shot this like book into like being the best book I've ever read, I think, because Jessie Buckley did an absolutely incredible job of reading it. She should do more voice work for things because she's incredible and I'm in love with her. It's historical fiction and I do like my historical fiction. I never thought I would be that sort of girl, but I do. I love my historical fiction. So that is my list of my favourite books I have read so far this year. I have read, I think, 34 books now this year. And yeah, I'm so excited to continue to read some incredible books. And I don't think I've read any books this year that I've outwardly hated, which is a change. It's just so lovely. It's so nice. I DNF'd a book for the first time ever this year, and I think it genuinely rested my soul. Yeah, I've been super excited to share these with you all, and if you've read any of these books, let me know in the comments. If you're interested in any of these books, let me know in the comments. Like I said, I would suggest all of these books, and I'm going to leave the Goodreads down below so you can check them out for yourselves as well. Thank you so much for watching this video. You know, like, comment, subscribe, all the good YouTube stuff, and I shall see you next time. Bye!